All right, so welcome back for another deep dive. And wow, we got a doozy for you today.
Yeah.
You know, we always love getting recommendations from you, our awesome listeners, and you really outdid yourself this time.
For sure. This one's a real head scratcher.
That's an understatement, right?
Yeah.
I mean, South Korea, we're talking attempted martial law, front page news, the whole 9 yards. You sent over a whole stack of articles on this, and well, let's just say things got really interesting really fast.
Yeah, I mean, South Korea, we think stable democracy, right?
Exactly. Economic powerhouse, K-pop, the whole bit. Not exactly the first place that comes to mind when you hear martial law.
Not at all.
So, just to set the stage, we're talking about President Yooun Suk Ye. He's been in office for a while, but lately, let's just say things haven't been going his way. Approval ratings, down the dumps. His wife, well, she's had her own share of controversies, which hasn't exactly helped the matter.
Right. Adds to the drama, for sure.
Oh, you better believe it. And then, bam, out of nowhere, Tuesday night, President Yoon goes and declares martial law. Just like that.
Just throws it out there. It's pretty wild when you think about it, right? I mean, martial law, that's serious stuff.
No kidding. We're talking military in charge, civilian government out the window, potentially even basic rights suspended. This isn't some historical footnote. This is happening right now in a modern democracy.
And that's what makes this such a fascinating deep dive, right? It goes against everything we think we know about South Korea. It makes you question, well, everything, really. Like, how did it even get to this point?
Well, like we mentioned, Yoon's been facing some serious challenges, both politically and personally. And these articles really dive into that, laying out the whole backstory.
Yeah, and they paint a pretty vivid picture of the pressure cooker he was under.
Absolutely. And this martial law declaration, it just throws gasoline on an already raging fire.
Big time. It's almost like a desperate move, a Hail Mary passed by a president who's lost his grip on power.
Yeah, that's definitely one way to read it. But then, here's where things get even crazier. Remember, it's Tuesday night, 10:30 p.m., martial law is declared. By 1 a.m., Parliament, the National Assembly, they've already voted to block it.
Yeah.
And by 5:18 that same morning, it's officially revoked by the cabinet.
Talk about a whirlwind. I mean, this all happened in the span of, 7 hours?
Less than that, actually. I mean, it's crazy, right? This wasn't some drawn-out political battle. It was like a flashbang, super intense, but over in a blink.
Which is actually kind of amazing, right? I mean, the system, the South Korean democracy, it actually worked. They pushed back against this attempted power grab and shut it down.
Yeah, you got to give them credit for that. But I mean, it wasn't exactly smooth sailing. You know, one of the articles talked about how police were actually blocking access to the Parliament building while all this was going down.
Oh yeah, I read that. The Speaker of the National Assembly, Woo Suk, he actually had to climb a wall to get into the building because the police wouldn't let him in.
Can you imagine that? I mean, you're the Speaker of the freaking Parliament, and you're scaling walls to get to work because the police are trying to stop you.
It's like something out of a movie. And the best part is, he actually said later, I went to the back where the National Assembly security was lax, climbed over the wall, and came in.
Classic. I mean, you got to admire the guy's dedication, right?
Yeah, total badass. But seriously, it just shows how chaotic and high stakes this whole situation was. We're talking about a direct challenge to the functioning of South Korea's government.
And it's not over yet.
Oh, no, not even close.
We've got protests erupting all over the country, top officials offering their resignations, calls for impeachment. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. We haven't even gotten into the economic fallout, the international reaction, the whole social media firestorm.
Yeah, we've barely scratched the surface here.
So buckle up, listeners, because this deep dive is just getting started. We've got a lot more ground to cover, a lot more to unpack, and trust me, you won't want to miss a minute of it.
You know, one thing that really gets me about this whole martial law thing in South Korea is just how quickly things escalated.
I know, right? It's like, boom, suddenly you're not living in a democracy anymore.
And people just, snapped out of it, you know? They weren't having it.
Oh, yeah, these articles are full of stories about people pushing back, hard protests, resignations, calls for impeachment. Like, everyone was just like, nope, not on our watch.
It's actually kind of inspiring when you think about it. People power,
Absolutely. And one image that just keeps coming to mind for me is that video of An Young, the spokesperson for the opposition party.
Oh, yeah, the one who grabbed the soldier's gun. That was intense.
Seriously. Like, here are these armed soldiers marching into the National Assembly building, and she just stands there, right in front of them, trying to stop them. Talk about guts.
I know, right? She actually said later, I didn't think, I just knew we had to stop this. It is heartbreaking and frustrating that this is even happening in 21st century Korea.
I bet. I mean, can you imagine being in that moment, seeing your country potentially slipping into authoritarian rule and just feeling like you have to do something, anything to stop it?
And the thing is, her actions really resonated with people. The articles all talk about how that video went viral, and she became like a symbol of the resistance against Yoon's power grab.
For sure. And it wasn't just her, right? You read those stories about the protesters, ordinary people taking to the streets, risking arrest, just to make their voices heard.
Absolutely. It just goes to show you that democracy isn't something that happens in some far-off government building. It's something that people have to actively fight for every single day.
Totally. So you've got all this pushback. And like we said, the system kind of worked, right?
Mm-hmm.
Parliament blocked the martial law declaration, the cabinet revoked it, and now Yoon's facing impeachment. But I have to say, it's still pretty unsettling, you know? I mean, a democratically elected president even trying to pull something like this.
Yeah, it's a tough one to wrap your head around. On the one hand, it shows how resilient South Korean democracy is, that it could withstand this kind of challenge. But on the other hand, it's like, how did it even get to this point in the first place?
Exactly. And what about the long-term impact on South Korea? Like, will this experience make their democracy stronger, or will it leave it more vulnerable in the future?
It's hard to say for sure, but I think it's going to have a lasting impact, for sure. The articles talk about how there's this real sense of unease among people, this questioning of what the future holds.
I mean, yeah, imagine waking up one morning and your country's under martial law. That's got to shake things up, you know?
Absolutely. And politically, things are still a total mess. The impeachment proceedings are ongoing. The opposition's going after Yoon hard, and there's just a lot of uncertainty about what's going to happen next.
So we've got this political drama, but then there's also the economic fallout, right?
Yeah.
The articles mentioned the Korean won taking a hit, dropping to a 2-year low.
Yeah, the markets don't like uncertainty, and this whole martial law thing definitely threw a wrench into things.
I mean, who wants to invest in a country where the political situation is so unstable? And it's not just big investors who are affected. The articles talk about small businesses struggling, people worried about their jobs, you know.
Right, it always trickles down. Political instability has real-world consequences for everyone.
And then you've got Yoo Min's wife, Kim Ki-hee, who, let's be honest, hasn't exactly been helping matters.
Oh, no, she's been adding fuel to the fire, for sure.
All those controversies swirling around her, the allegations of corruption, the accusations of interfering in government affairs. It's like, come on, lady, read the room.
I know, right? Some of the articles even suggest that her actions might have played a role in Yoon's decision to declare martial law, like he was trying to distract from her scandals.
It's impossible to know for sure, but it definitely adds another layer of intrigue to this whole situation. And with the impeachment proceedings looming, well, it's safe to say that things are far from over.
It's pretty wild, right? I mean, you look at a country like South Korea, they've got this whole booming economy, K-pop taking over the world, you know, modern, thriving democracy. But then, bam, suddenly you're talking martial law.
It really makes you realize that democracy, it's not a given. It's something you have to constantly fight for, protect, nurture, you know.
That's for sure. It's fragile, man. It can crack under pressure, especially when you've got a leader who's maybe not so committed to democratic principles.
And that's what's so unsettling about this whole union situation.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you read these articles and you see this guy, a democratically elected president, trying to pull a power grab.
And it wasn't just him, right? You've got his wife, all the scandals swirling around her.
Oh, don't even get me started on Kim Ki-hee. I mean, talk about bad timing.
Yeah.
It's like, honey, your husband's trying to impose martial law. Maybe now's not the best time to be making headlines for all the wrong reasons.
Right. It's like she was practically handing ammunition to the opposition.
And they definitely didn't hesitate to use it. I mean, the impeachment proceedings, the protests, the whole thing just blew up in Yoon's face.
It's hard to imagine him recovering from this, politically speaking. His authority's shot, his party's fractured, and the public, they're not exactly thrilled with him right now.
Yeah, the articles paint a pretty bleak picture of his future. But I guess that's what happens when you try to mess with a democracy that's been hard-won and fiercely defended.
Absolutely. And that's what I keep coming back to, you know, this idea that people, ordinary citizens, they can make a difference.
Like Ahn Greer-young, right?
Yeah.
I mean, she's just one person, but she stood up to those soldiers, and her actions sparked a movement.
Exactly. And all those protesters, the people who took to the streets, they sent a clear message. We're not going to let you take our democracy away from us.
And it worked, right? The system, flawed as it might be, it actually worked. They blocked the martial law declaration, forced Yoon to back down, and now he's facing the consequences.
It gives you hope, that even in the face of authoritarianism, people power can prevail.
But it also makes you wonder, what now? Like, what happens to South Korea after this?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? I mean, the impeachment proceedings are still ongoing, and no one knows how that's going to play out.
Even if Yoon gets removed from office, the underlying issues, the political divisions, the economic anxieties, they're not going to disappear overnight.
Right. And this whole experience, this brush with martial law, it's going to leave a scar on South Korean society.
For sure.
Yeah.
But maybe, just maybe, it'll also serve as a wake-up call, a reminder that democracy is precious, that it needs to be protected, and that it's up to all of us to be vigilant.
Because it can happen anywhere, right? This isn't just a South Korea problem. It's a reminder that democracy is under threat all over the world, and we can't afford to take it for granted.
So to our listeners, we leave you with this. Pay attention to what's happening in the world, stay engaged, and don't be afraid to speak up for what you believe in. Because in the end, democracy is a team effort.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, that about wraps it up for this deep dive. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.